This is the 46 of 46 podcast October Sessions, where we'll talk all things spooky Adirondacks and more. From Bigfoot encounters on the NPT to ghostly sightings in the trees. We'll dive deep into the heart of these mountains and the people who dare to climb them. From Adirondack Bigfoots to haunted lakeside bark huts. It's all here on the 46 of 46 October Sessions. It's October, and you know what that means. Time for the third annual October Sessions, right here on the 46 of 46 podcast, where we hear stories of spooky fun from right inside the blue line of the ADK. The Adirondack Park has a lore to it, a mysterious quality that can't truly be explained in words. It's a feeling, and we all know that feeling. A feeling that may not be felt more throughout the year than it is now in the fall. When the colorful leaves are slowly falling as the gentle yet chilly autumn breeze blows through the woods, creating a chorus of sounds throughout the forest. A feeling of magic that can only be felt in these mysterious woods. But with mystery comes the unknown. Perhaps what gives this park such a mysterious quality is how much wild and remote land exists within this 6 million acre blue line, filled with thousands of mountains, lakes, and rivers. More land than one could experience over multiple lifetimes. After all, it has been elegantly nicknamed the Dismal Wilderness. Could the unknown be out there, moving around in these woods just beyond the glow of your headlamp? Or maybe something is moving in broad daylight right next to you on the trail, through the trees, without you even noticing. Hard to say, really. Do things exist that we're told do not exist? Could there be more to this world than meets the eye? Well, I believe there is. And this week on the October Sessions Bigfoot in the Blue Line episode, I'll be talking with Dave, who had a chilling face-to-face encounter in the Tupper Lake region with a creature that can only be described as Sasquatch. He's with me to take us through the story, start to finish. Dave, welcome to the 46 of 46 podcast October Sessions. It's great to have you here, and I hope you're doing well, and I look forward to hearing your story today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So let's just dive right into it. So take us through what happened that day. Where were you? What were you doing? And just take us right through the story.
All right. Well, you gotta put yourself in the time frame of right around this time of year, late August, early September 2001, right before the entire world changed. That was my junior year of high school. Just want to start that. So I go out to the Adirondack Mountains every year. Still do. Go camping, Tupper Lake, Long Lake, all those way out of the way places. You know, Mount Sabatas, Mount Arab. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of great little campgrounds out there. And a lot of them, if you don't know they exist, you never find them. And it's kind of the way I like it. You know, you truck everything in, you truck everything out, and you never leave a trace.
Absolutely. It's a very remote area back there, too, when you're in that Tupper Lake, Long Lake area. I mean, it's just a long stretch of nothingness and wilderness, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And if you ever get the chance to check out those areas, I highly recommend it. But you also got to remember that this is the Adirondack Mountains, so you got to deal with all the other critters out there. You know, you got your deer, moose, bear, occasional bobcat, unconfirmed reports of mountain lions. But needless to say, was I expecting Sasquatch? No, not a chance.
So take us
So,
through what you were doing when you had this encounter here.
all right. So, I'm out there for a couple day camping trip. My dad and some friends of mine, and well, we do everything we can. Fishing, check out whatever's out there. Um, just relaxing, hanging out. There's a lake that we like to swim in. It's got a little natural water slide. Um, and we'll go down and just hang out. It's a great little place. Have a little place to relax. And even when I got older, it's a great party spot to hang out at too. But this one day, I decided that I'm kind of bored just fishing all day, or just looking at a book or Game Boys or whatever. So I decided to take a little walk. Back in the early 1900s, this section of the Adirondacks used to be a very bustling New York maple syrup and open air TB hospital area. So there's railroad tracks that would come out to this area. They've long been abandoned. So you can walk along them for miles. This one general area leads to a fallen down bridge. And I just, you never know, want to see what it is to see, you never know. So, got, some water, and I just decided to take a little walk. Don't want to bring anything too crazy with me because you never know. Didn't want to get involved with bears or anything, so the lighter equipment I had, the better. So I'm walking through, walking along tracks, and 45 minutes later, I hear something crashing really big and heavy. You know the sound of something heavy going through the woods, and when it breaks through a brush line. So I'm thinking, okay, best case scenario, moose. Haven't seen a moose in a while, and that'd be pretty cool. Worst case scenario, it's a bear. So take some time, and you walk through, go around the corner of the railroad, and I see this very, very, very tall, hairy, muscular creature. And it just makes me stop. I just stop completely. Because, you look at something, you can see it with your own eyes, but your brain's not registering it. It locates a shock. Then, after what feels like an eternity, I look at it, and then it registers in my brain. Dude, you're looking at a Bigfoot. I kind of froze. I mean, what else would you do? You freeze in this sort of situation. You don't know. What's it going to do? Is it going to charge me? Is it going to attack me? Is it going to run away? What's it going to do? So, this Bigfoot just walks right through the woods, comes out into the clearing, starts going across the tracks, and then it stops when I get into its view. It just stood there. Reddish brown, rusty colored hair covering its entire body. And easily 7 foot, maybe 7.5 foot tall. And just, this thing was huge. It was wide. You could definitely tell it was very muscular, very, very powerful, and very intimidating to look at. But when it turned its head, and we just kind of locked eyes on each other, I felt like there was an intelligence beyond a wild animal. There was an intelligence behind the eyes, but didn't do anything threatening. It just stood there. So, being a younger guy when I at the time, I'm kind of freaking out. I don't know what to do. So I just kind of, hold my hands out to my sides to let it know, like, hey, I'm not carrying anything. I don't have weapons. I kind of let it know that I'm not trying to do anything threatening. I back up a little bit. And I'm expecting it to do something. It just stood there. Gives me a small grunt. It sounds. The grunting is hard to explain, but it's something I'll never forget. It sounds kind of like a bear mixed with hippo mixed with almost sounded like I don't know what else. There was something else in there, but it did sound kind of like that. But then it just walked off. It continued on its way, like I wasn't even there. Like it didn't perceive me to be a threat. So that's when I turned around and decided enough is enough. I'm going to go back to the campsite and kind of just wait until everybody else gets back. So later on that evening, when everybody gets back, we were cooking up some dinner. I told them my experience. I mean, I get the typical reaction of, yeah, right, you never saw that. That's insane. But I told them, we'll go out in the morning. We'll go right to where I was. Because on my way back, I put a little marker down. I set up a sapling that I found, and I was able to bend it over in such a way that I knew where I was. And that's my trail marker. So this way, just in case I ever get lost. It's an old Boy Scout trick that I've learned over many years. And the next day, we didn't have digital cameras because they were way too expensive back then. Smartphones weren't a thing yet, so all we had were disposable cameras. So we walked on the rail line. We found my marker. Then we go around the bend to where I saw the creature, and you can see where something walked through the brush. It was evident something big went through. And we look around, we only found one footprint, and it was in a sort of kind of muddy-ish area, and we took a picture of it. Unfortunately, that picture never came out clear. It was big. I had a size 10 foot back then, and it was easily twice the size of my foot. So we walked through the woods, and we found a few more tracks. But then it just got to a point where you just see two footprints next to each other. And nothing. So we put a little marker, we put a stick down. So this way we had an idea of what was there. We put a stick down with a piece of cloth on top. We go out and start looking around for more footprints. We looked everywhere. And there was nothing. Nothing at all. For a 15-foot radius around us, we did a search like how you would search for a missing person. We're all standing in line, staggered with each other, so we are looking down on the ground. We do this easily an hour, and we don't find any other footprints. And at that point, we're like, okay, so there's two giant footprints. It looks like something was standing there. Where did it go? Where did it go? We don't know. It's like it teleported somewhere or vanished, or for all we know, could have just jumped straight up. We never found any other footprints. We never found any other signs. And my friends decided that was enough for them. They didn't want to ever go back. And it just sparked my curiosity. So I started looking up more and more about the sightings in the Adirondacks, and I found that there's been so many sightings over the past 100 years that I knew what I saw. I knew I saw a Bigfoot. And I go back every couple of years. I've been going back every couple of years since then, in the hopes that maybe I will find it again. But as of right now, that was the only time I've seen it.
That's a pretty wild story. I appreciate you sharing that, Dave. So now let's go back to, you know, when it was happening, when it was standing right in front of you. As a kid, you don't even know really what to make of anything, but what were you feeling inside as you were staring at it?
What I was feeling was generally I was shocked, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, once it registered that this is not a bear, this is not a deer, this is not a moose, this is not a wildcat, this is an upright, bipedal creature. There's only one thing it could be. It could only be a Bigfoot. And you just stand there in disbelief. Then you start to think, this is a Bigfoot. What is it going to do to me? This thing could. The way this body was, it was huge. Like I said, you could definitely see how muscular it was. If it wanted to rip me apart into a million little pieces, it could do that easily. There was no way I could outrun it. There was no way that I could outfight it. But after just staring at each other, it just, all of a sudden I got this calmness over me. I just sort of felt like when we locked eyes, it felt like it was trying to say, you're not worth my time. I'm not going to bother you. Just go away. And after just getting the look in its eyes, I just kind of felt, okay, just stay calm. You can stay calm. It's going to stay calm. Let's just see what it does. And then it just walked away. It didn't do anything threatening to me, and I think maybe it understood my gesture, where I held out my hands to my sides and maybe realized that I'm not going to do anything to harm it. I have nothing that could harm it. So maybe it's, I'm just trying to rationalize everything. Like, how do I get out of this without getting hurt? So I just figured, if you treat it like any other wild animal, like a little bit of respect, back away, and let it know that you're not a threat. Maybe you'll perceive that, and it'll leave you alone.
Yeah, it's definitely the proper technique there in those situations. So when it walked out and it turned to you, you said it walked out on the tracks up in front of you, and then it eventually, when you were in its sight, so you clearly saw it first, and then it was in a spot where it could see you, and then you turned, and then you said it grunted before it went back into the woods. And you mentioned the grunt sounded like a mix of a whole bunch of different animals together. So how powerful and loud was that grunt? Or was it do you think it was at you, or was it more of just kind of like how we'll like sigh to ourselves, like, like, was it towards you, do you think, or was it more of just towards himself, the grunt?
I think it was kind of, I personally believe that it might have been more along the lines of like, it's saying to itself, oh great, there's another person who's going to claim he saw Bigfoot.
Sure.
Maybe this one's been seen. I don't know. It's sort of kind of just, it's hard to tell when it comes down to an animal like that, but I do believe that maybe it's just looking at it, and it's like, oh great, here we go again.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally get that. It makes perfect sense. Now, were you able to get a good look at its face when it turned and looked at you? I know you locked eyes. Do you remember any details of the face?
The face, it was the eyes and the nose had a very human-ish quality to it. The way its nose structure was, it wasn't wide like a gorilla, but it wasn't, thin like ours. It was sort of in between. Okay. Its lips were, I wouldn't say tight, but full, but not really full, kind of in between. Had a lot of hair. I remember the hair, just rust-colored hair all over it, and its eyes were just dark, but from the distance, it was hard to see exactly if they had a color to them, but you could just feel the energy from them. I didn't see any ears. Maybe they were covered up by hair, but but the eyes and the nose is what really sticks out to me.
Sure, and you mentioned that it was very muscular and wide. Were you able to see like muscle definition from where you were, or just wide because it was just so massive?
It was just wide because it was so massive, and I mean the way it moved, it moved. The way it moved its arms is like how a bodybuilder almost would move its arms. Sort of like it kind of moved it out in a slight arc around itself. Like you
Sure.
see a bodybuilder would walk around. But there was a very graceful movement to it.
So then when you got back to your camp and you started talking to everyone and you mentioned that they laughed a little bit, and then you guys obviously went back the next day. I guess my question becomes, how believed were you in that moment? Or was it just like, yeah, sure, why not? This should be fun. Or, obviously some people might believe it, some people might not. I guess take us through a little more of that detail when you were talking to the people back at camp.
Obviously, if you say to your friends who are high school age, hey, I just saw Bigfoot, everybody's going to laugh at you. So, I told them, look, I will basically do all of your homework for 1 full year if we don't find anything.
Nice.
But once we found the footprints, they couldn't deny it. But they're like, oh, that's a bear. No, that doesn't look like a bear. That's a bear footprint. No, it's not a bear footprint. Went back and forth like that.
Mm-hmm.
Then they were trying to say that I made it. I'm like, how can I make something that big, that wide, and make it look accurate?
And you mentioned that you saw that one of the tracks was in mud, and then the other tracks were like on the ground. How defined was the track in the mud?
Very defined.
Awesome. Awesome.
So, unfortunately, it's just one of those things where, like I said, digital cameras weren't really an everyday thing at the time, and all we had were disposables.
Sure. I would also imagine when it was happening, because you mentioned yourself, like time stopped, time froze.
Mm-hmm.
Your brain had to process what in the world you're looking at. Even if you had a nice iPhone 13 in your pocket, I'm sure pulling that out and snapping a picture would have never been on your radar.
No, it's because you put your hand in your pocket, then you never know what the animal's going to do.
Yeah, and I'm sure I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong, but I would imagine the whole time when you're looking at it, you're processing this, and the idea of pulling out a camera wouldn't even cross your mind, even if you had it in the pocket, regardless.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Was there any odor, any smell of any kind that you remember?
No, I don't remember any odor or smell or anything. I know some people say that they stink of mustiness, but I didn't detect any that I could remember.
Mm-hmm. And how like into Bigfoot would you have been before this? Would you have believed Bigfoot exists? Would you believe Sasquatch was real, was not real before this happened? Kind of what was that? Where did you fall on that line?
I just thought it was... Originally, I thought Bigfoot was something along the lines of a made-up creature or a missighting, misinterpretation of a creature that's already known. But now I know differently.
That's it. Now you know differently. That's exactly correct. Now you know differently. It's definitely an incredible story. And out in that neck of the woods, that Tupper Lake, Long Lake area, I mean, as I mentioned earlier in the show, it is just remote. There is nothing out there. So if there's anywhere for something like this to be and to never really be seen, that's a pretty good spot.
Yeah.
And it was broad daylight too. Around what time do you think it was that this happened?
3:30, 4 o'clock, somewhere in the afternoon.
Yeah. That is wild. So what was the walk back to the campsite like for you? Like you just had this absolutely crazy, life-changing experience where something was just right in front of you that you're told doesn't exist, that shouldn't exist, but yet there it was. What was going through your head as you were walking back to the camp?
I just couldn't believe it. I was like, dude, did I really see that? Did I have this experience? The whole walk back was really a blur. I don't.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things where you finally get back to your destination and you say, "How did I get here?"
Yeah, sure.
Everything was just such a blur.
And you mentioned that, as you were looking at it, your brain was trying to process what you were seeing, but it didn't have any sort of aggressive tone or aggressive nature to it. So was there fear in you, or was it more of a curiosity? Because obviously some people have these encounters and they are just the most negative, fearful, atrocious situations. And then other people have encounters like yours where they didn't really have that fear, but at the same time, you're in its elements. You're in the woods, so you are. You're not like in a car. You don't have the safety of that, or you're in the elements. And you mentioned if it wanted you, it had you. So kind of talk to me about the fear or the lack of fear that was happening in that scenario.
It's mostly shock. I mean, you see something and you prep yourself for, okay, bears. You can prep yourself for that. You can prep yourself for deer. You can prep yourself for moose. You can prep yourself for just about any known creature out there. Once you come in contact and see it. But when it comes down to Sasquatch, it's you don't believe it. It's right there in front of you. Your eyes see it, your brain registers it, but you don't believe what you're looking at. Then, I mean, yeah, I got scared, but I didn't want to, really project it.
Sure.
Because you never know. I mean, they say animals can sense fear. They can pick up on your emotions. They can pick up on how you are. So I didn't want to get too scared because you never know if it will do anything or not. So it's sort of like kind of get yourself in shock and just sort of just let it kind of let the situation unfold and it's just kind of like that. Just let it unfold and see what happened. I mean, I was more in shock than anything.
Mm-hmm. Let it unfold and hope it ends well. So
Yeah.
now you've obviously gone back out there a lot. You mentioned you've been out there maybe every couple of years. And you haven't seen anything else since then, but I am imagining this is always in the back of your mind every time you're in that neck of the woods, or maybe in the Adirondacks, period. I mean, it could be any. These encounters and sightings are reported all over this park. So,
Right.
there's obviously other areas, but it clearly did not keep you from going into the outdoors anymore, especially in that type of situation where you're in its element right in front of you. So that's good.
Exactly. So, I mean, the way I figured it, if it's going to pop up again, I mean, now we have the iPhones and smartphones and cameras are everywhere. It's probably a little bit easier. I mean, I do take a little bit more precautions when I hear something crashing through the woods, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still in the back of my mind. I mean, you never know what you're going to see. And if I do come across it again, I'm hoping I can actually get a digital picture where I can actually show off saying, hey, I actually see it and here it is.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be a fantastic situation. So you would want to see it again if you would want to experience this again if the opportunity arose then.
If it arose, yes.
Very cool.
But I'm not going to try to force it, obviously, and I don't go out of my way looking
mm-hmm.
for it. Figure if it's going to happen, it's going to happen. I'd rather it happen kind of on their terms instead of mine.
Sure. No, I totally understand that perspective on the subject. Yeah, it's a pretty wild wild encounter that you had, and just, broad daylight, the middle of the day, walking through the woods, and life-changing situation presents itself right before you. Pretty wild stuff. All right, well, I think that's a great spot to wrap it up, Dave. Thank you so much for sharing this story. I have been personally super fascinated by hearing this, and I know the people listening will as well. So thank you so much for coming on the show to tell your awesome story.
Thank you for having me.
Well, that'll wrap us up on this first episode of the October sessions right here on the 46 of 46 podcast. I always look forward to these Bigfoot in the Blue Line episodes, and I know a lot of you listening do, and I appreciate you listening to them year after year. What an amazing story this was, and it just confirms there might be more out there than meets the eye. Thanks for tuning in to another October session episode right here on the 46 of 46 podcast. If you have had a crazy encounter story of any kind, something weird, something unusual and unique happened to you out in the woods, shoot me a message. I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to hear more about what you experienced out in the woods. There's a lot more out there than we realize, and it's good to talk about it. But thanks for listening. Check back on Fridays next week. New episodes right here on the 46 of 46 podcast. Have a great week, everyone. Remember to always leave no trace, do the rock walk, and if you carry it in, carry it out. And don't forget to be aware of what could be in the woods right with you as you're walking along those trails. Have a great week.